Hi everyone, welcome to the Thinking Crypto YouTube channel where we cover the news, facts, and sentiments about the crypto market. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the thumbs up button. Guys, Ripple's CEO Brad Garlinghouse was interviewed by CNN and the video got posted today. And there's a lot of takeaways, guys. Whether you like, hate, or love XRP, this is a great video. I'm going to go through it and break it down. Brad talks about Bitcoin, the market as a whole, regulatory clarity. So you don't want to miss this. Definitely watch the video to the end. Now, I have some call outs here. I'll put the information in the description of the video. This way you guys can have it as a takeaway. So my first takeaway here, guys, the first takeaway. This is great overall exposure for the crypto and digital asset market. You have the CEO of a company that's leveraging a digital asset at the New York Stock Exchange getting interviewed on CNN. So we've come a far way. That you see the maturation taking place. We even saw, I think it was last week as well, the CEO of Lolly, Alex Edelman, who got interviewed by CNN as well as by the same reporter. So you're seeing exposure across the board. So this is great for crypto as a whole. Now, I'm going to play clips for you guys just so you can hear it from the horse's mouth. But the first takeaway, well, I should say the second takeaway is regulatory clarity will get better globally and U.S. regulatory clarity possible this year. So let me go ahead and play that at the 55 point mark here, just so you guys can hear it directly from Brad, and we'll do the same throughout the video.
Clarity is getting better, and I mean that globally. Countries like Singapore and Thailand and Switzerland and Japan. I think the U.S. has still an opportunity to do more there, but I think we will probably see that in 2020, and I think that helps catapult the whole industry. I also think,
So I hope you guys caught that. He said global regulatory clarity is going to get better, which is great. And of course, he knows this because he was at Davos. He was talking to different regulatory people and stuff around the globe, a lot of different governments. And he says, it's very likely that we see the U.S. regulatory clarity this year. We, of course, just heard Steve Mnuchin talk about that to Congress, that we're going to see something soon. And I think this is going to be great for the entire market, as Brad as he just said. Now, on to the next item. Here 135, Brad talks about he met with regulators and banks at Davos and around the world.
What I'm doing, and a lot of what I did in Davos, is meeting with regulators, meeting with very senior people at banks, and explaining to them how crypto can be used, how specifically XRP can be used to solve a real problem, not to circumvent regulation, not to circumvent any government. And I think once people understand that, they very quickly become disarmed. It's no longer a bad word.
So Brad's going out there educating a lot of these regulators and governments and banks around the globe. And notice he mentioned how XRP can solve a problem, right? Of course, of moving money cross-border. So they're going out there and they're talking about XRP, guys. If they were just a blockchain company, let's say they were just using there's just a blockchain of moving information. I think like Xcurrent, he wouldn't have to go talk to regulators, but they want to use XRP, and you need to go talk to the regulators to get the information, well, the regulatory clarity, of course, so that you can use a digital asset. And that's why he's traveling around the globe. That's why they're doing all this stuff, because they want to boost the adoption of XRP. So let's move ahead here at the 219 mark, where Brad talks about the inflows around XRP.
On it. Last week, we did $54 million of XRP flows into Mexico. That's 7.5% of all flow from US dollar to Mexican peso.
You were 7% of the market.
Last week. And that's up from maybe 3% in December. So this is growing very quickly.
XRP being used, and he highlights it, right? Of course, with MoneyGram and Bitso, the movement of XRP being used to move money from US to Mexico. So between the US dollar and the Mexican peso, and 54 million in just 1 week. And that's just a drop in the bucket, because they are going to be doing more and building new corridors, right? That's the plan, guys. Imagine the movement. They capture even just like say 20% of the global movement of money. We're talking trillions upon trillions of dollars, right? I think they're probably going to capture more, but it just takes time. And he's going to go through why it's taking so long, because a lot of people get antsy, like, why is the XRP not going up and this and that, and they don't understand what's being built here. So 443 here, Mark, he talks about what they're doing about with regards to the other corridors.
Well, so I'll dodge the question a little bit by saying it's the and versus the or, meaning we definitely are prioritizing new corridors. We've talked publicly about the fact we're in the Mexican Peso, Philippine Peso, and Australian dollar. We started to talk about some of what we're seeing in Brazil, and we'll increasingly talk about other new corridors. I mean, the good news is we have a lot of demand, and so we'll certainly expand in other corridors. But that isn't to say we do care about liquidity, using the Mexican peso as an example, and we are seeing liquidity naturally grow there because liquidity begets liquidity, and market makers, whether they're existing traditional market makers or crypto market makers, they see the liquidity and they realize, hey, there's an opportunity there, and so it's growing very well.
We're off to Brazil. Dodging.
Well, there's certainly, when we look at a framework of which countries, we want regulatory clarity.
And that's key.
And that's an important one. Yeah. So there are markets, I mean, any remittance market that has a lot of US dollar, euro remittances into other countries, that's a high priority. But if you don't have regulatory clarity, that's a challenge in those markets. Typically you'd say India would be high on our list. India hasn't yet provided a lot of clarity from a regulatory point of view, and so we have not prioritized.
So I hope you guys caught that, right? You talked about Brazil and then India, but notice what he said. India, with the volume of people and movement of money, right? You would think it would be high priority, but the problem is lack of regulatory clarity. The Indian government, if you guys have seen, they've constantly flip-flop. Crypto's banned, crypto's unbanned, this is happening. It's just nonsense happening there, right? And likewise, the US has been slow. So this is what's holding back a lot of XRP adoption in the different corridors. And I know a lot of people on its face, they're just worried about price. They're just like, why isn't, we thought this bank is going to use this and this is going to happen. It takes time and it takes regulatory clarity, because Ripple's not trying to do something outside of the government. They're trying to work with the regulators. And I think a lot of people really don't grasp this. A lot of people don't understand how business and government work, and, how this whole social construct of government and so forth works. And you have to, as an investor, really listen, really, zone in on what steps are needed, especially for a digital asset like XRP, what's needed to be established for adoption. But they're getting there, right? You see the volume increasing, corridors launching, so it's looking good. Let's move ahead to part 2. And once again, we're just doing the major call outs here. You guys can, of course, watch the full interview on your own. So he was asked the question of, who's leading right now in the crypto market as far as countries? And he surprisingly said China, which makes sense. They control a lot of the Bitcoin and Ethereum mining. So let me play that for you guys.
It depends a little bit how we talk about leading. I mean, China, to your point, it's been fascinating to see. I mean, they really, through mining power, control the Bitcoin blockchain. You have 4 miners in China that represent something like 60+% of mining capacity, and 80% of mining capacity is based in China for both Bitcoin and Ether. So in many ways, I think China's been incredibly strategic about how they think about that.
Yes.
And I look at the U.S. and I say, hey, U.S., here we are in downtown New York. We could and should, I think, do more for that clarity to allow for more investment. But you see, I think, a lot of countries around the world seeing that this is a technical wave, this is a major step, and they want to invest in it. They want to.
So notice what he said there. China is leading right now. And if you guys saw my other videos, we see the U.S. is slowly starting to wake up because they're building the world's largest Bitcoin mining farm in Texas in the US, and a lot of different mining farms are popping up across the United States, North Carolina, into Alaska and so forth. So it's not surprising, and definitely it's going to become, a battle. I did, my video was the battle for Bitcoin mining, right? And we're going to see more and more competition heating up between the different countries around the globe as they wake up to what this new tech revolution, this new industry can do for their economies and for improving payments and a lot of different things, right? So let's jump to 139 here, where Brad talks about it is actually great, it's healthy for the central banks to be building their CBDCs, their central bank digital currencies, because it further validates the crypto market, and they're leveraging the technology, right? Okay, let me play it here for you guys.
I know we're struggling here. However,
well, look, when I step back and I think about it macro, I think it's really healthy and constructive for the entire crypto blockchain community to see central banks and central governments lean into what can these new technologies do to make our economy more efficient, our payment infrastructure more efficient, any transaction more efficient. So at large, I think it's really positive. Mnuchin was asked about this in Davos, and he made a point which I think has some validity, which is the Fed window in the United States. If a bank goes to the Fed window, they're not getting a crate of dollars, paper dollars. They're getting a digitized, centralized ledger entry. And so there's kind of like, what's the difference between if the central bank issues a centralized token versus what they do today? Like, how different is that? Now, there's some governments around the world that might, you could argue, say, well, a central bank could go direct to consumers.
So I'm going to jump ahead to 246 here, just for the sake of time, where he says, hey, central banks could use the XRP ledger if they want.
For a Fed coin one day, or
we think
some
about
other...
The XRP ledger as an open source technology, we think about how do we make it really useful for the customers we work with. We also think about how do we make it extensible and how do we participate in that open source community in a way that makes it extensible to other types of customers. But could central banks? Sure, they could use aspects of that.
Be more efficient, what they create one day.
Yeah, and that ultimately is the underpinning I think we all focus on. How can we make this more efficient for customers? And right now, the customers we focus on are commercial banks, payment providers. We certainly are thinking about other types of customers we could serve. I mean, I have made the point, I don't know if I've ever said it on air, but I've made the point that in the earliest days of Amazon, it's called Amazon Books. It was a bookseller. It competed with Barnes & Noble, competed with Borders, and when I think about Ripple today is viewed as a cross-border payments company. We view ourselves as a blockchain infrastructure company. The first vertical we've done is cross-border payments. We want to make sure we're winning in cross-border payments before we do another vertical.
So, big takeaways there. Customers are focused on commercial banks, payment providers, and they are looking at other customers. So probably corporates and so forth. He made the analogy of Amazon was first a bookstore. That's what they did. But what did they do? Expand to other verticals and became a giant powerhouse, right? Selling everything pretty much that you can get. So they're now a monster. So that's what he's looking at, his vision, that Ripple can start at, cross-border payments. But as we've talked about on this channel, there's the micropayments industry with music and video and streaming and all that. And there's probably other verticals they're going to target and to leverage XRP, guys. Big things ahead. So let me jump ahead here where he confirms, and once again, he confirms that CBDCs need XRP. They need a bridge asset because you still have the walled gardens, right? You still have the different fiat currencies. Where's the interoperability going to come from? You need that bridge asset. Let me play it here for you guys.
I mean, very open. Even if the Fed in the United States is using a coin, you still have a cross-border settlement dynamic where if you have central banks around the world using their digital asset, I don't think it changes the need for a cross-border neutral
Something
settlement.
in the middle, like an XRP.
And XRP has been extremely efficient. I mean,
okay.
There you go. There you go. Straight from the horse's mouth. We've seen this in the World Economic Forum where they highlight Ripple XRP as a solution for wholesale CBDCs. We've seen a lot of different dialogue and talk about it. We had Ripple employees confirm that as well in the past. So I want to put this out here is the facts. There's a lot of haters, so that's why I'm taking my time going through the talking points here. Now, guys, this is funny. I think this is funny. If you guys recall, Mike Novogratz had some negative things to say about XRP recently, and Brad pretty much says he's not educated about it. And I think I'm in agreement with him. Like, I don't think Novogratz has taken the time. I like Novogratz. I respect him. He's made billions on Wall Street, right? And who knows? Maybe he was shorting XRP. That's why he's saying these things.
Another bad year in 2020.
I think the short answer is I think Mike doesn't fully follow Ripple very closely. There's a lot of things he wasn't aware of some of the stuff we're doing with MoneyGram. I think he if he watches this, he'll be surprised to hear that we had $54 million of ODL flows last week. Look, there's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of misinformation in this market, and I think it's important to make sure that the industry is educated.
So he pretty much called Mike out, saying he doesn't know what the hell we're doing. He's invested in Ripple, but Mike is invested in tons of things, right? And he hasn't really taken the time to learn what Ripple is doing, especially with the usage of XRP. So I'm glad Brad called him out on that. So let's jump to part 3, and we'll talk a bit more about some other things. And by the way, remember, Brad is, like I said, guys, he's rubbing shoulders with Mnuchin, the White House. Ripple has an office in D.C. They've been at the White House. They're lobbying D.C. politicians. So they're doing a lot of great work, not just for XRP, but for the entire market, guys, for regulatory clarity, for pushing the narrative that, hey, it's not just scams here. It's not just Ponzi's or whatever people want to call it. There's actual utility, there's actual solutions to problems here. So let's jump to part 3 here. And right off the bat, Brad confirms once again, like he said many times, that he is invested in Bitcoin. He holds Bitcoin, says Bitcoin utility sucks, right? As I've been saying on this channel for a long time, but its use case as digital gold cannot be ignored. It is a valid use case. It's a hedge against other markets. So there's a lot of religious maximalism in the crypto market. I personally diversify. XRP is my number 1. Guess what my number 2 is? Bitcoin. My number 3, Ethereum. I just added Tezos to my portfolio because I believe there'll be multiple winners, like Brad said before. And he holds Bitcoin. The guy holds Bitcoin, and you still have XRP maximalists going nuts, like trying to trash Bitcoin and other coins. That doesn't help the case of utility for XRP, right? And Brad addresses this. I hope some of you who have that maximalist religious mindset, you really wake up today, because even the CEO of the company that is bullish on XRP holds Bitcoin, so he's diversifying, which for the life of me, some people don't understand. You reduce your risk by diversifying. So let me play it for you guys.
You said you're an investor in Bitcoin. You own Bitcoin.
I am. I do own Bitcoin, yes.
Yeah. So XRP, is that a good investment?
You know, I am going to dodge that question also.
I've seen you dodge that many times.
You know, look,
What's the investment case? I guess that's a better question.
Well, I'm going to macro all digital assets. I have said very publicly, I think the value of any digital asset in the long term will be derived from the utility it delivers. Bitcoin utility increasingly, I think, is just viewed as it's digital gold. The gold market is a multi-trillion-dollar market, and Bitcoin today is, I think, around $150 billion, $160 billion.
Yes.
Do I think there's an opportunity for Bitcoin to appreciate as more people see it as a useful store of value? Yeah, I think so. Do I think there's going to be other digital assets that increasingly have utility for customers and therefore drive velocity, usage, people holding it, it drives demand? Yes, I think that's likely.
Will the utility value of
So I hope you caught that there, right? Very logical. These are not emotional, not a maximalist mentality, not a religious, like people treat coins like religion, like my religion's better than yours. Like, stop that. Let's grow up, right? Let's be professionals here. And like he said, Bitcoin's value will go up as a store of value. And a lot of people can't wrap their heads around that, not understanding the concept of gold, right, as digital gold. And that's why I hold Bitcoin, guys. Bitcoin is going to do well. It's going to do well. Not for the day-to-day utility, of course not, but for the store of value. And of course, he's segmenting like, hey, they don't have to compete with each other. XRP is a different beast, right? It's better utilities for moving money cross-border, but you can't ignore a use case of digital gold and understand the store of value. So let's jump ahead to 120 here.
XRP.
Focused on media, very fascinating. I think as XRP has utility through what Ripple is doing and with other people using XRP, and there's a bunch of other companies doing very cool stuff. I mean, a very innovative company called Coil doing interesting micropayments, particularly focused on media. Very fascinating.
Yes.
And so when I look at XRP, I look at the whole. I look at what Ripple's doing, I look at what Coil's doing, I look at what Forte's doing as a gaming company using XRP. I look at the holistic. If there's a lot of utility and people see value in that utility, then I don't worry about it. I often...
So what he's talking about there is the price. She asked him like, oh, what's the point of investing in XRP? What would drive the value up? And he's talking about utility and what they're doing with Coil and Fort, right? The micropayments industry, not just cross-border payments. So he's not worried about that because the price is going to go up based on utility, right? There will be a demand for it as more and more folks start leveraging it, and we're already seeing that. So let's jump ahead here to 234.
Between digital currencies, digital assets here, this belief that one currency needs to rule them all.
Yeah.
Actually, just greater awareness of everything that's going on floats all boats here, and I mixed analogies there, but I know what I'm saying.
I so passionately agree with this point. There is not going to be one winner in the crypto space. I believe that to my core. There are going to be a lot of different participants solving different segments of problems, and I look at what's going on in Bitcoin world, and I don't view it as competitive with what Ripple's doing. I look what's going on in most parts of the Ethereum community. I don't look at it as competitive with what Ripple's doing or what I see happening in the XRP community. I want to see all boats rise. I think if that all boats rise, if the market cap of all digital assets grows, that's good for everybody. And I think ultimately we all need to focus less on what, throwing stones, and more on let's solve customer problems.
There you have it, guys. There you have it. So stop with the maximalism. Stop with the religious affiliation with coins. This is why I personally diversify. Sure, you want to look at what makes sense, business sense, what's solving a real world problem. And, from my own research, and I think a lot of you as well know, XRP is my number one because of its use case and the potential utility. That doesn't mean Bitcoin won't do well. That doesn't mean Ethereum won't do well, right? And he mentioned all three. So I hope you guys understand that. This is why we need professionalism, maturity. We need to grow up in this market. There's a lot of maximalism and throwing stones, and Brad pretty much says stop throwing stones. Stop it. Let's focus on what we're doing here. What does this market have? If it's just a matter of speculation, this is a waste of time. It has to bring solutions to a real world scenarios, right? So think about that. Now, finally, I love this. What Brad says here at a 7.05 mark here. What does he want to see Ripple as in the next few years?
Overall, crypto community will continue to grow at really impressive rates. In 5 years from now, I don't know exactly how to think about that, but I think within crypto world, I think Ripple will continue to grow and take market share. But that will probably be, we're focused on cross-border payments today. I think we'll look at other use cases, as I kind of alluded earlier. And I hope that in 5 years we've got we're not just Amazon books, but we are Amazon.
This is why I'm holding XRP, guys. Huge use case. I think on this channel I've said it before. Ripple has the potential to be the Google of payments, and Brad is looking at Amazon. He wants to be the size of Amazon in a sense of being that powerhouse and holding control of the market as much as Amazon, right? And of course, XRP is going to be a big part of that. So really great takeaways here. A lot of insightful information. Once again, I'll put these notes in the description of the video. Definitely watch the full interview, guys. I just wanted to call out some important things, and we see the continued building of utility around XRP. That is what Ripple is doing. That's why they're going globally, knocking on regulators' doors, having the conversations, because if they were just simply using X current, right, they wouldn't have to do that. They wouldn't have to do that because it's just using blockchain tech. But XRP, the digital asset to move money cross-border in multiple corridors, they need to get the regulatory clarity. So hope you guys get that. Really great stuff. And like I said, Brad holds Bitcoin. He's not anti-Bitcoin. You have to put it in its lane. Everything is in its lane, right? XRP is in a different lane than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is more of a story value, and it will do well. So guys, what do you think about this news? Leave your thoughts and comments below. Thumbs up if you like this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and I'll talk to you guys later.